Yes, of course. With Omicron, we're following that very carefully. Our death registry, of course, takes a few weeks to collect. And of course, Omicron has just been with us for a few weeks, but those data will be forthcoming.
Well, that's a huge thing that I think that should have been incorporated into all discussions on this from the beginning. Welcome to the second hour of the radio program. Ladies and gentlemen, it is Monday. We're starting the week out correctly. I'm your hostess, Dana Lash. Sign up for my Substack newsletter, and you can get it through danalash.com. All right, so that's a big thing. And kudos to Brett Baer for asking the CDC director that question. And that's what now they say they can't really actually tell how many were with and from. Because there is, as we discussed last hour, a major difference between logging a fatality from the virus as opposed to a fatality that, as she had said previously, over 75% of the people had at least four comorbidities, and logging fatalities from the virus or people who have these other comorbidities that ultimately that was their cause of death. They had the virus, but they had other comorbidities that were ultimately their cause of death. We should have had streamlined that before we began fear-mongering the entire world with inflated numbers on fatalities. And we know that they were inflated. I was just sharing with you last hour how in Minnesota they had to reduce their fatality rate by over 40%. Because what they had discovered is that there were other comorbidities that actually had contributed to said fatalities, and it wasn't the virus itself. There's a huge difference, and that's not being petty with semantics. That's science and fact. Good heavens. But this is why people don't trust these entities. And things are changing so much. So just to let you know, because I know all of you have seen this. If you've tried to go back to work after the holidays, you got kids going back to school, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe you're traveling, whatever it is. For instance, so at my, you do your well visits, right, every year at my doctor's office. They're like, well, if you've had any symptoms of the coronavirus, you need to make sure you've quarantined for 14 days. I'm like, that's not even the CDC position anymore. And then something else, like with our one of my kids' schools, they're like, oh, well, it's 10 days. What? There's so much discrepancies between. No one has a singular approach. That's not scientific. And I was explaining earlier how I actually canceled our summer vacation because our destination was like, we don't recognize natural immunity. And that's the big government thing. I mentioned this, and I think that this is an incredible point you need to consider. This is the first time in human history. It's the first time in science where your own immune system isn't good enough. It is not validated unless it was something that was provoked by the government. The government has to give you immunity for your health. Your body is no longer capable of doing it. That's the message that they're sending. There are people who are so against individualism and they are so lost without the guiding hand of the government that now we don't even recognize science because it's not something controlled or orchestrated by government. It's just wild. Absolutely wild.